Nick Reisman is with Capital tonight. He's at the convention in Cleveland, and he's on the line now. Nick, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I'm sorry to be the less exciting Nick. I'm no Nick Walenda, but
hey,
here. Thanks for having me.
You're dealing in politics, and it's like walking a tightrope in politics. I mean, you've got to be able to talk about this.
And we could,
absolutely.
And you see him roaming around the convention, we can call him Nick at Night. You know,
Nick at Night. Okay, so what do you think? What are you seeing down there? It seems like everything seemed to come together yesterday, despite the plagiarism story and all of that.
Yeah, I think Republicans and the Trump campaign kind of wanted to, turn the page, as it were, on day two away from the Melania Trump address. Donald Trump's son, one of his sons, Donald Jr., gave a very well-received speech at the convention last night. Really kind of brought down the House as at the very least, probably the breakout star of the convention. Seems like every convention has a breakout star, and at this point, it looks like it's Donald Jr. And I saw a couple of people on Twitter speculating about whether Donald Jr. one day would, run for public office in New York, which would be a very interesting thing to see, certainly. So yeah, I think despite what happened on the first day, a lot of Republicans here are kind of looking at it as a story that maybe the media is following, but not necessarily one that they are hung up on or all that concerned about.
And you're there at the hotel, and there's each day they have a breakfast. The Republican Republican delegates, New York delegation, has a breakfast. Do you know who's going to be the speaker today? They have some heavyweights. Yeah,
earlier in the week, the delegation, as Senator Griffo knows, the delegation heard from a couple of very interesting figures in the Republican Party, including former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, Senator Bob Corker. Both those guys were runners-up in the selection process for Donald Trump's search for a running mate. So they heard from those guys yesterday. They heard from Wendy Long, who faces, I would say, probably a difficult path to challenging U.S. Senator Chuck Schumer later this year in the general election. And today they're going to be hearing from, I believe, Congressman Tom Reed from the Southern Tier District, as well as John Katsimatidis, who ran for mayor of New York City as a Republican a few years back, is a pretty prominent donor and also a radio host down in the city as well. And I think they're also going to be hearing from a Wisconsin U.S. Senator, Ron Johnson.
Hey, Nick, tell me your thoughts on, the glitz and glam of this convention. Different than previous conventions, and, there's one common denominator, and, of course, that's Donald Trump. What do you think?
Well, it's really interesting because, these conventions are primarily what you see on television is what's out there for, voters' consumption across the country. That's primarily what voters see. Elsewhere in any convention city, and Cleveland is no different, and Philadelphia next week for the Democrats is going to be no different, it really takes on kind of this festival, carnival-like atmosphere where, you've got people selling Trump merchandise around the city. You've got people going to cocktail receptions around the city. You've got protesters who flock here, both on the right, on the left, who are, here demonstrating about a variety of causes, certainly, issues with policing in the United States. You've got the Black Lives Matter folks who are here demonstrating. So it really is kind of a cross-section now of the national political conversation.
We talk about the Walendas as being a big tourist attraction. When these conventions come to town, it's a huge spotlight on a city, and it's a great opportunity for Cleveland.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you're talking about all of the carnival-like activity, I thought you were talking about Nick trying to track me down when we were in Cleveland, right, Nick? I was pretty easy
very accessible.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things we talked about earlier, and talk about this too, because I think it's so imperative when you talk about the threat of terror and disruption of the democratic process. I think this has been done so orderly, and it really is a reflection not only on the organization, committee, and the city, but also all the law enforcement agencies, because you have agencies from across federal, state, and many states have contributed law enforcement officers. So just the magnitude and how you feel as you see this unfolding. So people who are protesting have that right to express themselves. People who are attending the convention have the ability to do what they want to do and to do it safely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a really good point, Senator. The number of law enforcement agencies that are here that are making the very physical presence known in Cleveland is quite apparent. And, one thing that's really struck me just walking around the city, walking around the convention site, you've got police officers, law enforcement officials, virtually on every corner, standing outside of every hotel. And delegates, residents of Cleveland, people just walking on the street, they're making a point of thanking police officers.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think the events of the last several weeks is weighing heavily on everyone's mind.
Yeah, it's got to be.
But I just thought that was a very good thing.
What about people packing? Are you seeing any weaponry? Because of course they have the concealed permit there in Ohio.
Right. Ohio is an open carry.
State.
And originally, I believe the Cleveland Police Union had asked that that law be suspended during the convention. However, Governor John Kasich said that he didn't want to do that. I have seen a handful, and I want to stress a handful of people participating in open carry, and it may have just been a half dozen, maybe 8 or 9 people who were doing that. They were, I think, doing it to make a statement.
Sure.
But it wasn't anything that has been, a dominating feature of the convention in any way, shape, or form.
So 2 quick things, Nick. When you talk about Kasich, you mentioned him. What's the feeling amongst the press corps of his absence from the convention? And then secondly,
and he's not endorsing. He won't endorse Trump.
Yeah, but he's the host governor. I think it's just kind of ridiculous, to be quite honest with you.
Well,
especially
governor. Because Ted Cruz is not he has not endorsed Trump at this point, and I don't think he'll do that tonight. So, what are your thoughts on that, Nick?
Well, I would say this. One, Kasich, I believe, is doing an event at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that is a really hot ticket, actually. You can't get credentials to get in there, either as a delegate or as a member of the press at this point. And I was actually on my morning run a couple hours ago. I went past the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and it's been completely cordoned off by the Secret Service. So it looks like it's a big event for Kasich. And that is, we should note, on the other side of town. Convention hall, so it's kind of an alternative convention, if you will, almost. But to that point about Kasich endorsing Trump or Cruz, fully being behind Trump, I think it's important to note that should Trump lose in November, a person who would be in a very good position to potentially win the Republican nomination in 2020 is the Indiana governor, Mike Pence, who is his running mate. There's a guy who maybe doesn't necessarily agree with Donald Trump on every single policy issue, but he can turn around to the grassroots party, to the base of the party, and say, hey, look, I was a team player back in 2016. All these guys were not.
And and you can't get any better improvement to your name recognition than what's about to happen tonight for Mike Pence.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's going to be the featured speaker this evening. It's really an introduction to the rest of the country, to maybe some Republicans nationally who haven't seen him before. And
in the unconventional year that it's been, and you expect the unexpected, what do you think may happen over the next 48 hours as you come to a closure of the convention there on Thursday?
Well, I have learned, over the decade or so that I've done this job to never make any predictions because,
and especially this year, especially this year. How do you make any prediction with Trump? It's really not something we've been all that successful with as the year has gone on. So
Bill doesn't think he'll use the teleprompter tomorrow night.
I say the big thing tomorrow night is he's going to start with the teleprompter and he's going to actually bring attention to it and say, I'm winging it. I'm the nominee. I'm doing it my way. I think he goes without the teleprompter tomorrow night.
I agree. I think he will depart from his notes and give an extemporaneous speech.
Yeah.
Or at the very least,
make it seem that way.
Kind of go off there. Yes, he's done that multiple times. Yeah. But I would, at the very least, expect on Thursday night a very big show. I think it's going to be a production, that, in Donald Trump's words, will be huge.
Okay, huge. Nick Reisman from Capitol Tonight. Thanks. And you got the senator to make an endorsement of Trump on the program the other night. I thought that was interesting because I didn't think that was going to come.
Which senator was this?
The one that's sitting in front of me now, Senator Griffo.
I didn't even realize I did that.
He did endorse, right? You on Capitol Tonight, you endorsed Trump.
I'll have to look back at the interview.
Okay, we'll have to check on that. So, all right, good
thanks,
stuff.
Nick.
Nick, thanks so much.
Thanks,
we appreciate your time.